Hey everybody, Mark Herman, aka LA Bengal fan on all the major platforms, and I am here with Sam Schneider from Primetime Sports Talk, and we are here with the Bengals' first win of the season recap. All right, so for the first time, hey, I thought I was going to get to break that out last week, and I just said no. A tie doesn't get the party horn; it just doesn't. As usual, hey, if you don't subscribe to this channel, please do. That's all I ask, is that you subscribe, and we'll keep doing these previews and recaps for you. So as usual, we're going to get to the good and the bad, and we're going to start with the bad, and there's not a lot today, but there was some bad. Penalties. That first Jacksonville drive, we had 3 penalties. Bynes had the face mask, and then Lawson, and it was just, I mean, we basically gifted him that, and that just drove me nuts. And I also felt like we wasted that first turnover on some bad play calling. I mean, it was just run, pass, 3 and out. We didn't get the first down. That bothered me. Couple situational, I talk about situational football all the time. The holding by Hopkins on the pass to Boyd bothered me. And the 50-50 ball, I don't mind 50-50 balls in the corner of the end zone, but why sample with Miles Jack covering him? Why not Tate, who had shown earlier he had a 50-50 ball on a pass interference and still made the catch? I just questioned the selection there. And then a horrible 2-minute offense before the half. I don't know why that's a trademark, where we march down the field, we get the score, and then we let them march right back down, and we held them to a field goal. But still, I just hate that not playing. You know, if you go back years of my videos, I've talked about how Belichick always scores before half and scores coming out of half. So that bothered me. And then I have one more big one that I'm going to save, and then everything else I've got to say is good. So what do you have on the bad side, and what do you want to comment on what I said?
Yeah, most of my bad is actually piggybacking on yours. You mentioned the penalties, and one of the first things I wrote down was that the refs are terrible,
Right.
And they were so bad in the first quarter. And I don't like it when fans blame something on the refs every single game. It drives me crazy, because it's an easy out. But on that first drive that you're talking about, you know, the very first pass interference I thought was baloney. The Trey Hopkins hold, I thought that was, I mean,
it was ticky-tack. It really was.
Yeah, you don't have to call that. And
Right.
Honestly, if we're not the Bengals, it's probably not called.
No.
And they had a couple other ones. For instance, when Carl Lawson got the personal foul, but we didn't even get to see a replay. They didn't even show a replay of it. And I saw the captain on Twitter saying, can anybody that's watching TV tell me if that was actually a penalty or not? Because I'm here at the stadium and it does not look like a penalty.
Yeah.
So that, so the refs bother me, but
Which
I will
also means
say,
they didn't show it on the scoreboard in the stadium either.
right.
Not only did we not get a replay at home, but the fans in the stadium didn't get to see a replay.
Right.
So,
I will say this, I jotted down several more. There's no reason to go over them all or anything. Right. But I will say, after the first quarter, the refs seemed to get it together and called a much more fair game. There's always going to be questionable calls. There was a no call on the pass interference on A.J. Green late in the game, where his arms got slapped down.
Yeah, and he was definitely early. There was no question he was early. So
yeah, he was way early. So, I mean, there's always going to be a couple blown calls like that, but overall the refs did get better. But in the first quarter, I mean, I was just seething. I was, especially on that drive you're talking about, I was so angry. The other thing that I'll, piggyback on the two things you mentioned was, I didn't hate the jump ball in the end zone, only because I trust Burrow to put it right there, and he did. But the only problem is, if you're Drew Sample, you got to fight a little harder for that ball, because it looked like he just kind of went like this, and Jack just yanked it away, or whoever it was just yanked it away from him.
And when my kid was playing basketball as in the junior Lakers, I used to say, you have to want the ball more. It's that simple. And Sample did not look like he wanted it more than Jack.
No, he didn't. And overall, I thought Sample looked great today. But yeah, he should have either grabbed onto that ball and not let go, or try to knock it out of the hands as he goes down. And I realized that he mostly had that ball as he went to the ground, but it's the old, you didn't control it all the way down. You didn't have it. The ball was still moving. And the last thing I wrote down, which you mentioned, and I talked at length with my buddy Pete about this during the game, is that last 1 minute drive from Jacksonville. They had just done us a tremendous favor by using up all their timeouts on
Right.
our drive, so that we didn't even have to use any of ours. And, the thing is, we were playing that prevent defense, and that's the most infuriating thing in the world, I think, for a lot of fans, because every team does it unless you've got a really, really good defense, and then you can play your normal game plan. And, the reason is to prevent the home run ball, and I get that, but that doesn't mean that you can just go belly up in the zone and let people just keep going over the middle, over the middle. Chenault had several right on the sidelines where he was able to step out of bounds.
Oh,
It was
we had
just,
chances to tackle him in bounds and exhaust the rest of the clock, and we
yep,
missed those. I think
yeah,
Sean Williams and Sims missed chances. That just drives me nuts, because we work so hard to get a score, and then all of a sudden we just give up these yards like they don't mean anything to us. So it drives me. That's always been a pet peeve of mine, and it's always driven me nuts. Even going back to Marvin Lewis, was how poorly we play the last 2 minutes of a half. It's just,
yeah.
it seems to continue on. The last bad thing I have, and then I promise I have nothing else bad to say, is AJ Green. We just can't seem to get him on track, and I'm starting to feel like maybe this is his last year in Cincinnati. It's sad for me to say, but I'm looking at the receivers. I'm looking at how Thomas and Tate and Higgins and Boyd, even Erickson contribute, and how invisible AJ is. He's getting targets. You can't say, oh, they're not throwing him the ball. Burrow's doing everything he can to get AJ involved, and there was that one play where he rolled out and led AJ, and AJ just didn't seem lost. I don't know if he didn't pick the ball up, but it was up in the air long enough. I thought that Burrow left enough anticipation, and it was just one of those, wow. I just kind of went, wow.
Yeah, that particular play, I took note of, because it was interesting. First of all, it was a great play by Burrow to get out of the pocket there, and to roll over. I think it's shared blame a little bit on both sides, but I think Burrow was trying to put it where only AJ could get it, and if he didn't get it, then so be it. The only thing is, I think he thought that AJ already was turning upfield, when in fact AJ was still running towards the sideline.
Right.
So Burrow tried to lead him, but AJ hadn't made the turn yet.
Yeah.
And I'm not excusing it, and this, Mark, you and I have had many conversations about this, because I'm in the camp of let him go, let him walk.
Right.
I didn't even want to tag him this year, and I wrote an entire article about it for Primetime Sports Talk, where I said he's not needed anymore. We just got T. Higgins, and AJ is obviously aged. The injury concerns are always going to be there. He's not quite going to be ready or 100% this season, and he's going to cost an absolute shitload of money. So let him go, and let's spend that money somewhere else.
Well, we didn't, and he's going to get paid. And you know what? He's a great locker room presence, and maybe he comes on later in the year and then signs a team-friendly deal. We'll have to see how it plays out. Today was the first day where I actually really kind of looked at it and said, wow, I mean, this could be the last year for AJ.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where, when it's somebody, and this is most Bengal fans, when it's somebody that you've liked for so long and has done so many good things for you in his tenure here, it's hard to look at it objectively and say, you know what, maybe it's time.
No. Well, let's get on to the good because there's a lot of it. Guys, we had a win today. This is awesome. And I know we can sit there and look back and say, wow, if we hadn't gotten the call in week 1 and we had finished, we could be 3-1. You know, the Browns game, I'm not claiming that's a possible victory because I thought that we were so far behind. We got a lot of junk points in the end that made the score look better. But the other 2 games, I really thought, you know, we should have won. So, but that's in the past. Let's look at the future. We finally, you and I called it Thursday. We said, this is Mixon's. We told everybody in fantasy to start Mixon, you know, and with the Mixon's coming out party, they finally got him going, and they finally did all the stuff that we were talking about. First of all, they didn't just run to the right side, they ran to the left side. And they tried to get, and they got him the ball on short little screens and swing passes. And then the right side opened up when they ran down the left side more. So we got better play calling, and we got Mixon on track. And that's my first really big good today. And look what came from it. I mean,
I agree. And on that, when we did the preview, what did I say? People were calling me nuts. I was like, he's going to go over 120 yards. He's going to find the end zone a couple times. Well, he found it a couple times on the ground and then once through the air too.
Right. Yeah.
And not only did he go over 120, he ended up with 151 rushing.
Yeah.
Added 30 passing for good measure. We do at Primetime Sports Talk, we do a question and answer session, fantasy starts and sits, trade advice, stuff like that. Starting at it starts at 8 a.m. You and my time, which is why I'm always so tired when we do these recaps.
Right.
But there were so many people today that were like, should I bench Mixon? Should I bench Mixon? I'm like, if there was ever a week not to bench Mixon, this is the one. Right. So I'm ready to log into Twitter and see all the messages I get that say, thanks, man. Did me a solid on that one.
If they listen to you. So the other thing I've got is the offensive line. I mean, Redmond did okay. I've been the biggest critic of Redmond, and I've been really hard on him ever since I had to sit there at Carson and watch Driscoll score a touchdown, have him get called short, then Redmond false starts, and now instead of being at the 1, we're at the 6, and we end up kicking a field goal. We end up losing that game by less than a touchdown. And I've been on him ever since then. But Redmond actually, and he was surprisingly well, better than Fred Johnson and Price in pass protection, which is why I think Burrow had more time today. I mean, if you notice how many shots he was able to take down the field, he bought himself time rolling out, but the line did better. I mean, they did better today.
Yeah, I agree. On the Redmond front, it's one of the things we always knew. He's a really talented guy. He's always been a really talented guy, but he just never has put it together until now and has been a little bit undisciplined. Like you said, false starts, stuff like that. But the line did look great today, and I can't believe I'm about to say this. Bobby Hart played really, really well.
The announcers even said something about Bobby Hart, and I was like, you know, you're talking about him like he's, you know, Trent Williams, and it's like, But he had his moments. He did okay. You know?
There were 2 things I noticed about it. One was both tackles, Hart and Williams, were both bouncing the guys to the outside rather than trying to block them straight up and getting pushed backwards.
Right.
So there was actually a true pocket there a couple times. The other thing I found really interesting that I thought was a really kind of fascinating coach's decision was at least 4 times in this game, they checked Fred Johnson in as an eligible receiver.
Yes.
But he was never meant to catch anything. No. We basically had 6 offensive linemen. They put him right next to Bobby Hart, but he didn't have to get down a 3-point. He was able to stand and hunch and line up like he was going to be a receiver and be ready to go. And those were the times that Burrow had a lot of time.
Well, that may be the new formula, because if you remember last week, we were asking Drew Sample to pick up a defensive end, and he's not capable. And Burrow got blown up a couple times just because Sample, and I didn't blame Sample because Sample can't handle a defensive end by himself.
Yeah, and especially some of the ones that he's played.
Yeah, so maybe this is kind of one of the new wrinkles they've come up with. I asked on Thursday, I said, coaches, you have to help out. This cannot be. These are the personnel you have, and I'm a big fan of, play to people's strengths and don't expect people to do things they're not capable of doing. And it looks like maybe they started taking that approach a little bit. I'm not saying they listen to me, but that's what I kind of saw, is that they weren't asking. By taking Sample out and putting Johnson in, you're not asking Sample to do something he's not physically capable of doing. The other thing I have here is, like, we got pressure from our pass rush, which really helped out our secondary. I mean, the two work hand in hand. So when you've got Minshew scrambling around or under duress, I mean, our secondary really looked good. Bates had an amazing game today. He was all over the place. He made some key hits. He separated Eifert from a possible big completion inside the 10. But Bates was right there. He tipped the ball that got us that initial interception to start the game.
Jordan Evans.
The pass rush helped out, and the secondary was much better today.
I agree, and they were a little shaky right at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
And maybe it was part of the penalties because they got called for a couple pass interferences. I'm still a little concerned about Phillips, just because there's a couple times, not that he did poorly today, but there's a couple times. On a replay, I noticed that he didn't even bother turning his head around to look for the ball. He's just running at the receiver like this and obviously trailing. And that scares me a little bit. But he wasn't terrible. And I agree with you. The secondary overall was great. And Von Bell just continues to be a leader back there too.
The only time, the only absolute, and it was part of it was the prevent defense, was that last 2 minutes of the first half. I mean, the secondary was like non-existent, but we've always talked about, prevent defense only prevents you from winning. So
yeah,
that's why I hate running it at all. But
I'll also mention real quick, in that prevent defense, those passes over the middle that they kept getting, if Mackenzie Alexander was active today, there wouldn't be nearly as many, and there wouldn't be any missed tackles.
Yeah. So, but and I was pleased. But overall, I was very pleased with the defense, especially the fact that we didn't have Daniels in there with Reeder. We didn't have Daniels and Gino were both out. I know Daniels, I think you told me, he's out for 3 weeks. So that doesn't.
Yeah, they put him on IR, so it's a 3 week minimum.
Oh, then it's over. So so we'll get him back in a few weeks and.
Yeah.
So and the last thing, I talked about this earlier, but we also talked about the better play calling. It wasn't just about running down the left side to open up the right side. It wasn't just about getting Mixon the ball, both passing and on pitches on the outside and get him going. But we talked about when Gio was in the game, we always passed. Well, they actually had Gio in the game on like some third downs where it looked, and they ran with Gio down both the left and the right side. So it kind of kept things off balance. And it's amazing when teams don't know what you're going to do, how much easier it is to execute a play.
Isn't that something? Something?
Hey, you know it? Whoa!
Who knew?
Who knew? So, but yeah, that was my big takeaway. I just was to actually see Gio running the ball. And it wasn't a junk time where they were but I mean, they were actually planned runs in passing situations. So you caught the defense not expecting it because it's not what you put on film for the past 3 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, it kept them off guard a little bit. And I guess I'm going to go back to offense now because I think today we saw what T. Higgins is going to be able to do. He had a couple issues. He had a drop that he should have caught. And but on let's see, I wrote it down here. T dropped a back shoulder pass, a beautiful one by Burrow, with 13 minutes to go in the fourth. But then at 11 minutes to go in the fourth, I think it was 2 plays later, had an absolutely gorgeous catch from Burrow. And that'll segue me into my broken record take of the week, which is, if you're a Bengals fan, how excited about Joe Burrow are you right now?
Oh,
because his short to mid game passes are just silly. He needs to work on some of the longer accuracy a little bit more. But the windows that he's fitting some of these balls into are, I mean, if it was any other quarterback, you would be clenching your teeth like, boy, that's dangerous. But for some reason, when you watch him play, you're like, nah, he can get that. He can get that. And I'll be damned if he doesn't every time.
Yeah, and he was dialed in with Boyd too. Boyd, and Higgins were just all on the same page today, and it was nice to see. So it's finally we're
Yeah,
starting to see progress. We're starting to see some serious progress. Now we're going to hit Baltimore next week, which is not going to be an easy game. I'm not going to say we're going to win that game, but it was nice to get this win under our belt. Be nice to be 2-1 going into this game, or 2-1-1, but
yeah,
you
and
know,
I think that's, I told a couple people that were texting me, late in the fourth quarter or after the game, how good the offensive line looked and how good the defense was playing. And I'm not trying to put anybody in a cold shower here, but I'm like, keep in mind, this is Jacksonville.
right.
And we've still got Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Indianapolis coming up in the next 5 games or 6 games. So it's not like we've turned a humongous corner, but that doesn't make the win today, any less satisfying or any less necessary. It's pretty big for Burrow to get his first win in the NFL.
No, that's good. And you know what? I want to say kudos to the offensive line, because one of the last things that it's on my list that I didn't talk about was no sacks in the first half and only 1 sack in the game.
Yep.
So, I mean, this was going into this line had given up more sacks than any other team, and to answer there. Now, once again, let's temper it. It's Jacksonville. We have Patrick Queen and the Baltimore Ravens next week. But with that said, it's got to be, like I said, we saw a lot of positives. Hopefully our coaching staff will continue to do what they should be doing and coaching these guys up and coming up with a scheme that keeps us in the game and gives us a shot this week coming up against Baltimore.
I think you and I were texting earlier this week, and I'm pretty sure, I think it was you, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned that what they need to do is pitch the ball to Mixon instead of handing it off.
It wasn't me, but I do agree with that, because I would say,
and they started doing it today, and I was like, I should be a coach.
Well, it's what we've been asking for. It's like, give him a chance. Don't just hand him the ball and expect him to follow Fred Johnson and Bobby Hart to the promised land, because they ain't leading you there.
Yeah, if the defense,
you've got to scheme those guys. So
if the defensive line is going to crash through that quickly, what's the best remedy? It's pitch the ball, let your running back get on the outside. So we did that a couple times today. I wish we'd done it a little more. Not that it mattered, because Mixon had a great game, but I think that's something that Zach really needs to look at going forward.
Also, we ran the spread a lot today. There was a lot of empty backfield spread formations, and I think that helped a lot too. Burrow was able to, because that's what he's comfortable in. So he was able to kind of see the whole field, and it spreads out the defense.
Yeah, you know what? I was really curious about and I doubt that it was an audible. But when we took that when we went for it on 4th down on like our own 30 or 35,
early in the game too.
Early in the second, I think.
Yeah.
And or maybe it was late in the first.
Right.
But regardless, they were lining up for it, and I was like, this is ballsy, because we're in our own end of the field. And Burrow lined up under center, and he made a couple calls, and then all of a sudden shift back to the shotgun,
right,
which is even more dangerous. But I'm really curious to know whether that was an audible or if that was the plan. If the play call was go under center, then say, hey, what do you say? And everybody moves around, and you go back to the shotgun, because it was a ballsy but excellent play call. Really, overall, I thought the play calling today was very, very good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I called the coaches out on our preview show and said, guys, this is where you got to step up.
And they were like, this guy in California.
Hey, this LA Bengal fan, man,
says we need to figure this out. So let's figure this out.
I wish I had that power over time and space, but I do not.
Oh, you kidding me? There's a red phone on the sideline. I can pick up my phone and call Zach.
That's right. Hey, pick him up. So, all right, guys, we'll be back on Thursday evening with a preview of the Baltimore game coming up this Sunday, and tell them where they can find all your stuff.
Absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at Buy and Sell You, and I write for Primetime Sports Talk. You can find that on Twitter at Talk Primetime.
Excellent. So we will be back with you later this week. Like I said, if you don't subscribe, please subscribe. It's all we ask. And with that, I'm going to say, hoo-day, everybody. Have a good rest of your Sunday, and we'll see you on Thursday. Take care.
Hoo-day.